The Krelll Hegemony took the human ship on a Wednesday afternoon. It was not a battle, not even a skirmish. The vessel was drifting near the Hegemony's outer border, moving slowly, carrying no detectable weapon signature, broadcasting no identification code. Patrol frigate flagged it, scanned it, reported the readings to Fleet Commander Threx Vaughn. Unknown vessel, the frigate captain said. Length, 52 meters. Hull composition, iron-nickel alloy with trace carbon, consistent with pre-industrial metallurgy. No energy shield, no weapons array, no fold space drive. Propulsion, chemical combustion, minimal thrust. Crew complement, undetectable. The ship appears to be empty. Threx Vaughn looked at the scan data on his command display. 52 meters, barely larger than a shuttle. Built from materials that belonged in a museum. Powered by burning fuel. Moving through space the way a species moved through space before it learned to fold it. A tin can. A relic. A joke. Bring it aboard, Vaughn said. Tractor beam. Gentle. I don't want it falling apart before the engineers look at it. The patrol frigate locked its tractor beam onto the tiny vessel. Pulled it in. The human ship did not resist. Did not broadcast a protest. Did not activate any defense. It simply came. Slowly. Silently. The way a leaf comes when the wind takes it. Without intention. Without struggle. Without fear. The ship was brought into the frigate's cargo bay. The bay doors closed. The atmosphere cycled. The technicians approached with scanning equipment. They expected to find a crew. Pilot. Someone. The ship had to have been guided here by someone. Or something. Or it had been drifting for a very long time. The hull was scarred. Pitted. Discolored by radiation exposure. Micrometeorite impacts dotted the surface like freckles on old skin. The metal was dull. Unpolished. Untended. The kind of metal that had not been maintained in decades. Maybe centuries. The kind of metal that belonged on a wreck. On a memorial. On a thing that had been forgotten. The technicians scanned the interior. No life signs. No heat signatures. No movement. No electronic activity. The ship was dead. Or sleeping. Or empty. They reported to Vaughn. Empty, Commander. No crew. No passengers. No cargo that we can identify. The hull is intact but degraded. The internal structure is unusual. Dense. Organic readings mixed with metallic substrate. We recommend disassembly for full analysis. Vaughn nodded. Proceed. Take it apart. Log everything. I want a full report by end of cycle. He turned back to his command display. To the border patrols. To the real work. The important work. The work of an empire that did not concern itself with 52-meter tin cans built from iron and nostalgia. The engineers arrived an hour later. 6 of them. Led by Chief Engineer Trellvos. They set up their equipment. Activated their scanners. Began the preliminary assessment. Trellvos looked at the ship. Looked at the readings. Looked at the hull. He laughed. Not cruelly. Not mockingly. The laugh of a professional encountering something absurd. The laugh of a man who has seen 10,000 warships and is now being asked to examine a garden shed. They sent this, he said, to his team, to the recording drones, to the log that would be filed and forgotten. The humans sent this, a chemical burning, iron-hulled, pre-industrial tin can, into hegemony space, near a contested border, during active military operations. He shook his head. Either they are mocking us, or they have lost their minds, or this is a joke that I do not understand. He placed his hand on the hull. The metal was cold, rough, real, not alloyed with exotic elements, not laced with superconducting threads, not reinforced with carbon nanotubes or graphene lattice, just iron, and nickel, and carbon, the stuff of ancient tools, of first furnaces, of species that had not yet learned to leave their own gravity well. Begin disassembly, Trellvos said. Standard protocol. Hull plating first, then internal structure, then any components we can identify. Log everything. Photograph everything. I want this documented for the Council. They'll want to see what humanity considers a military asset. The engineers set to work. The first 3 hours were boring. The hull plating came off in sections. Standard riveted construction. No welding. No molecular bonding. No self-healing polymers. Rivets. Physical, mechanical, old-fashioned rivets. The kind that required a hammer and a hand and a human being standing in a factory, driving them home one by one. The engineers cataloged each section, measured the thickness, analyzed the composition, confirmed iron-nickel alloy, trace carbon, minor oxidation, consistent with atmospheric exposure over an extended period. Decades, maybe longer. Beneath the hull plating they found a second layer. Thinner, darker, not metal. The scanners returned confused readings. Organic, but not biological. Not exactly. Something between. Something that had the molecular structure of a living membrane but the rigidity of a calcified shell. Like bone. Like coral. Like something that had been alive once and had hardened into permanence. Trellvos ran his scanner over it 3 times. The readings did not change. This is not in any database, he said. This material is not in the Hegemony's materials registry. It is not in the Galactic Standard Index. It is not in the precursor archives. He tapped the surface with a diagnostic tool. It rang, not like metal, like wood, like something that remembered being alive. He made a note, continued. Beneath the second layer they found the internal structure. Or what should have been the internal structure. The space that should have contained crew quarters. Life support, navigation, communications, weapons. The standard components of any vessel, however primitive. The space contained none of those things. Instead, the engineers found a single chamber. Round. Roughly 10 meters in diameter. The walls were lined with the same dark, organic material. The floor was covered in a thin layer of what appeared to be soil. Dark, rich, damp, real soil. Not synthetic. Not simulated. Actual earth. Actual dirt. Actual ground. And in the soil nothing grew. Not yet. But the soil was there. Waiting. Ready. The way a field waits in early spring. Before the planting. Before the first green shoot breaks the surface. Waiting. Patient. Certain that what is buried will rise. Trellvos stared at the chamber. At the soil. At the empty, waiting, ready soil. He looked at his team. His team looked back. No one spoke. What is this? One of the technicians asked. I don't know, Trellvos said. And he meant it. For the first time in 20 years of engineering work, he did not know what he was looking at. And the not knowing was not frustrating. It was humbling. The way a mountain is humbling. The way an ocean is humbling. The way something vast and patient and old is humbling. He scanned the soil. The readings came back complex. Layered. Alive. Not with organisms. With potential. The soil contained seeds. Thousands of them. Encoded in molecular structures so small they were invisible to the naked eye. Each seed contained a complete genetic archive. Not just a plant. An ecosystem. A web of relationships. A dependency chain. A living system compressed into a point of potential. Waiting for the right conditions to unfold. He scanned the walls. The organic material was not inert. It was responsive. It was reading the environment. Adjusting. Regulating. Maintaining the soil at precise temperature, humidity, and chemical composition. Without power. Without input. Without any visible mechanism. The walls were doing it. The walls were alive. The walls were the life support system. The walls were the engine. The walls were the crew. There was no crew. There had never been a crew. The ship did not need one. The ship was its own crew. Its own pilot. Its own engineer. Its own gardener. A single, integrated organism disguised as a metal box, carrying a payload that was not a weapon. Not a tool. Not a technology. A garden. Trellvos stopped the disassembly. He ordered his team to step back. To put down their tools. To stop cutting. To stop scanning. To stop treating the chamber like a specimen, like a puzzle to be solved, like a mechanism to be understood through dissection. "Nobody touches the soil," he said. "Nobody touches the walls. Nobody takes samples. Nobody breaches the chamber further. We observe. We record. We do not interfere." His team stared at him. This was not protocol. Protocol required full disassembly, complete analysis, every component cataloged, tested, filed. Protocol did not allow for stopping, for hesitation, for the kind of reverence that Trellvos was feeling in his chest, the kind of feeling that made him want to be quiet, to be careful, to be worthy of what he was looking at. But Trellvos did not care about protocol. Not anymore. Not here. Not in front of this. He activated the recording drone, positioned it to capture the chamber. And then he did something he had not done in 20 years of engineering work. He sat down, on the floor, outside the chamber, and he watched. The chamber breathed. Not visibly, not audibly, but the scanners showed it. The walls expanded and contracted in a slow rhythm. The soil temperature fluctuated by fractions of a degree. The humidity cycled. The molecular composition of the air inside the chamber shifted. Not randomly, purposefully, the way a sleeping animal breathes, the way a forest cycles, the way a living thing maintains itself in the absence of external input. The ship was alive, had always been alive, was not a vessel containing a garden, was a garden containing a vessel. The metal hull was camouflage, a shell, a disguise, the way a seed pod disguises the life inside it, the way an egg disguises the bird, the way a closed book disguises the story. Trellvos watched for 2 hours. He did not speak, did not move, did not eat. He watched the chamber breathe. He watched the soil wait. He watched the walls tend. He watched the seeds sleep. And he felt something shifting in his understanding. Something fundamental. Something about what technology was. What advancement meant. What a species could build if it stopped trying to conquer and started trying to continue. At hour 3, the chamber spoke. Not in sound. In light. A soft, warm glow emanated from the walls. Not artificial. Not electrical. Bioluminescent. The organic material produced light the way deep-sea creatures produce light. Slowly. Gently. Without heat. Without radiation. Without any of the harsh signatures of manufactured illumination. The light was the color of late afternoon, the color of sun through leaves, the color of a world that was not the hegemony, not any world the Krelll had ever seen, a world that existed only in the soil, in the seeds, in the genetic archives encoded in molecular structures too small to see. And with the light came a message, not spoken, not written, grown. The organic material on the far wall shifted, rearranged, formed shapes, letters, symbols, not Krell script, not any script in the hegemony's databases, but the recording drone captured it, and the translation algorithms working slowly, carefully parsed the meaning. The message read, "If you are reading this, we are gone. This ship carries everything needed to begin again. Plant it, tend it, remember us." Trellvos read the message. He read it again. He read it a third time. He sat on the floor. He looked at the chamber, at the soil, at the seeds, at the light, at the message, and he understood. Not fully, not completely, but enough. Enough to feel the weight of it. Enough to feel the trust of it. Enough to feel the faith of it. The humans had built this. Not for war. Not for defense. Not for conquest, for continuity, for the possibility that someday someone would find it, would open it, would read the message, and would choose to plant it, would choose to tend it, would choose to remember. They had built a gift, and sent it into the dark, and trusted that the dark would deliver it to kind hands. Trellvos reported to Fleet Commander Threx Vaughn at end of cycle. He stood in the command center. His uniform was clean. His posture was rigid. His report was thorough. He described the hull, the organic layer, the chamber, the soil, the seeds, the walls, the light, the message. He described it all in the flat, precise language of an engineering assessment. But his voice was different, quieter, slower, the voice of a man who had seen something and could not fully contain it within the shapes of words. Vaughn listened. He did not interrupt. He did not ask questions. He let Trellvos finish. And then he asked the only question that mattered. Is it a weapon? No, Commander. Is it a threat? No, Commander. Then what is it? Trellvos was quiet for a moment. He looked at the floor. He looked at his hands. He looked at Vaughn. It is a promise, he said. A promise that life persists, that a species can look at the void and say, I will not be erased. I will be planted. I will grow. I will be remembered. And then build the thing that makes the promise real. And send it out. And trust. Vaughn stared at him. Vaughn was a military man. Commander. Conqueror. He had taken 40 systems. Occupied 30 worlds. Broken 12 species. He understood force. Understood strategy. Understood the arithmetic of power. He did not understand promises. Did not understand planting. Did not understand the kind of faith that built a garden and sent it into hostile space and trusted that someone would tend it. Explain the technology, Vaughn said. The organic material. The self-sustaining ecosystem. The molecular seed encoding. How is it possible? What level of engineering? It is not engineering, Trellvos said. Not in the way we understand engineering. We build machines. We assemble components. We impose function on inert matter. This is different. This is grown, cultivated, coaxed into existence. The hull was not manufactured. It was raised. The way you raise a child. The way you raise a garden. The way you raise a species. Slowly, carefully, with attention, with patience, with the understanding that what you are building is not a tool. It is a life, and lives cannot be forced. They can only be invited. Vaughn was quiet. He looked at the scan data, at the chamber readings, at the soil composition, at the seed archives, at the message. Plant it, tend it, remember us. The bioengineering, Vaughn said. The self-sustaining systems. The molecular encoding. How far ahead of us is this? Trellvos considered the question. He thought about the Hegemony's bioengineering division, about their gene editing facilities, about their synthetic ecology programs, about the best work being done by the best minds in the empire. And he thought about the chamber, about the walls that breathed, about the soil that waited, about the seeds that carried complete ecosystems in molecular structures too small to see, about a ship that was not a ship but a garden, about a technology that did not impose but invited, did not build but grew, did not conquer but continued. 1,000 years, he said. Maybe more. Maybe 1,000 years of research, of experimentation, of failure and refinement and understanding. Maybe 1,000 years of learning to listen to living things instead of commanding them. Maybe 1,000 years of deciding that the purpose of technology is not to dominate the universe but to participate in it, to be part of it, to help it continue. He paused. We build weapons, he said. They build futures. The command center was silent. Vaughn looked at the scan data, at the chamber, at the message, at the tiny, scarred, 52-meter vessel sitting in the cargo bay. The vessel he had called a tin can, a joke, a relic, a thing to be dismantled and filed and forgotten. It was none of those things. It was a seed, and seeds do not care about empires, do not care about borders, do not care about conquest or occupation or the arithmetic of power. Seeds care about soil, about light, about water, about time, about the patient, inevitable, unstoppable act of growing, and growing, and growing, until the thing that was buried is no longer buried, is no longer small, is no longer fragile, is no longer dependent on the hands that planted it, is no longer in need of permission, is simply alive, simply here, simply continuing. Vaughn made a decision. The UES Wanderer was not dismantled. Fleet Commander Threx Vaughn ordered it transferred to the Hegemony's agricultural research station on Krell Prime. Not to the military labs. Not to the weapons division. Not to the engineering corps. To the agricultural station. The place where the Hegemony grew food for its population. The place where soil was studied. Where water was managed. Where growth was understood. Where life was tended. The transfer was quiet. No broadcast. No announcement. No ceremony. A transport shuttle carried the 52-meter vessel from the frigate's cargo bay to the research station's primary greenhouse. The greenhouse was vast. 3 kilometers of climate-controlled growing space. Home to 10,000 plant species. Home to soil from 40 worlds. Home to the slow, patient work of cultivation. The Wanderer was placed in the center of the greenhouse. The hull was not removed. The chamber was not breached. The soil was not disturbed. The seeds were not extracted. The message was not filed in a database or analyzed by a committee or debated in a council chamber. The message was read, and honored, and acted upon. Trellvos oversaw the installation. He positioned the vessel in the greenhouse's central growing area. He connected no power, installed no sensors, applied no monitoring equipment. He simply placed it in the soil. Let the roots find their own way. Let the walls breathe their own air. Let the light come in its own time. Let the seeds wake when they were ready. Not before. Not after. When they were ready. 3 weeks passed. Nothing happened. The vessel sat in the greenhouse. The soil stayed dark. The seeds stayed sleeping. The walls stayed still. The engineers monitored from a distance. They waited. They did not interfere. They did not force. They let the garden find its own rhythm, its own timing, its own readiness. On the 22nd day, the soil shifted. A single green shoot broke the surface. Small, fragile, barely visible. A point of life pushing up through dark earth. Reaching for light, reaching for air, reaching for the simple, ancient, unstoppable need to grow. Trellvos was there when it happened. He was sitting on the greenhouse floor, watching, waiting, being patient, being present, being the kind of person who understood that some things cannot be rushed, cannot be optimized, cannot be accelerated, can only be witnessed, can only be honored, can only be allowed. The shoot grew, slowly, deliberately, the way first things grow, the way the first plant on any world grows, with the full, terrifying, beautiful commitment of a thing that has decided to exist, that has decided to push through the dark and reach for the light and become what it was always meant to become. Not because it was told, not because it was engineered, because it was alive. And alive things grow. And growing things need nothing except time and light and the willingness of the world to let them. Within a month, the chamber was a garden. Not a simulation, not a hologram, not a genetic archive rendered in digital form. A real garden, living, breathing, cycling, producing oxygen, filtering air, regulating its own temperature, maintaining its own water cycle, supporting its own microbial ecosystem, a complete, self-sustaining, alive system, growing in the center of the Krelll Hegemony's agricultural research station, growing without permission, growing without input, growing because that is what gardens do. That is what life does. That is what seeds do. They grow. They do not ask. They do not wait for approval. They do not check the political situation or the military balance or the diplomatic protocol. They grow. And the growing is the point. The growing is the message. The growing is the answer to every question the galaxy has ever asked about survival and purpose and meaning and continuity. The Krell scientists studied the garden. Not by dissection. Not by extraction. Not by analysis. By observation. By sitting beside it. By watching it grow. By learning its rhythms. By understanding its needs. By providing what it required without imposing what they wanted. By becoming gardeners instead of engineers. By choosing to tend instead of to take. By choosing to participate instead of to control. And in the tending they learned. Not the technology. Not the mechanisms. Not the molecular encoding or the bioengineering or the thousand-year science behind the walls and the soil and the seeds. They learned something simpler, something older, something that could not be replicated in a lab or scaled in a factory or weaponized in a war room. They learned patience. They learned humility. They learned that the most advanced thing a species can do is not build a bigger gun, not fold space further, not compute faster, not conquer wider. The most advanced thing a species can do is plant a seed and walk away and trust that someone will water it, that someone will tend it, that someone will sit beside it and watch it grow and feel, in the watching, the simple, ancient, holy satisfaction of being part of something that will outlast them. Fleet Commander Threx Vaughn visited the greenhouse once. 3 months after the planting, he stood at the edge of the garden. He looked at the green, at the growth, at the life, at the thing that had been a 52-meter tin can and was now a living ecosystem, a breathing world, a continuing story, promise kept. He stood for a long time. He did not speak, did not issue orders, did not file reports, did not strategize, did not conquer. He stood, and he watched, and he felt the weight of what he had almost done. The dismantling, the analysis, the scrapping, the reduction of a gift to components, the conversion of a garden into data, the destruction of a promise for the sake of understanding. He had almost destroyed it, had almost called it a joke, had almost laughed, had almost filed it and forgotten it, had almost treated it as a thing to be taken apart instead of a thing to be tended. And the humans had sent it anyway, had sent it into hostile space, into the territory of the species that might destroy it, might dissect it, might mock it, might ignore it. They had sent it anyway, because the sending was the point, the trust was the point, the faith that someone, somewhere, would open the chamber and read the message and choose to plant instead of to dismantle. That faith was the technology, the real technology, the thousand-year technology, not the bioengineering, not the molecular encoding, not the self-sustaining ecosystem, the faith, the decision to build something that assumed the future would be kind, that assumed the finder would be gentle, that assumed the dark would deliver the seed to hands that would plant it. That assumption, that trust, that quiet, radical, unreasonable human belief that life recognizes life, that even enemies can become gardeners, that even conquerors can learn to tend. Vaughn left the greenhouse. He did not look back. He did not need to. The garden would grow, with or without him, with or without the hegemony, with or without the war, with or without the border, with or without the conquest. The garden would grow, and the growing would continue, and the continuing would outlast the empire, would outlast the species, would outlast the stars, because that is what gardens do. They outlast, they continue, they remember, they carry the names of the people who planted them. They carry the stories of the species that built them. They carry the message. We were here. We mattered. We chose to grow instead of to conquer. We chose to plant instead of to burn. We chose to trust instead of to fear. And the trust was rewarded. And the planting was honored. And the growing continues. The message on the wall glowed softly, warmly, the color of late afternoon, the color of sun through leaves, the color of a world that was not Krelll, not human, not any single world, the color of all worlds, the color of every world that had ever held a seed and let it grow, the color of the oldest promise, the first promise, the promise made by every species that ever looked at the ground and decided to put something in it and wait. Plant it, tend it, remember us. And the Krelll Hegemony, conqueror of 40 systems, occupier of 30 worlds, breaker of 12 species, knelt in the soil, and planted, and tended, and remembered, and the garden grew, and grew, and grew. The end.